The energy giant BP is planning to become carbon neutral by 2050. It's going to almost halve its oil and gas production in the next 10 years. So how is it going to do that? And is it really achievable? Katie Prescott is here with that.
Yes, Sarah, and you may be surprised to hear that BP is also supporting the UK government's planned phase-out of new petrol and diesel cars by 2040 or even earlier. At a conference this week, the company's laying out its future, navigating this very fine line between the move away from fossil fuels to greener energy and convincing investors of their plan. It's being led by the chief executive, Bernard Looney, who started in the business as a drilling engineer 30 years ago and took over in February, just, of course, before the pandemic started. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Katie.
So is this BP saying we've reached the end of oil use? We're seeing demand for oil now falling.
Well, we did issue our energy outlook during the week, and it's got 4 scenarios in there, Katie, 2 of which say that the world has reached peak oil in 2019, and 2 of which say that oil demand will continue to grow. And of course, the reality is we don't know because it's about the future. But what we do know is the world's changing, and it's moving away from one in modern history where the energy system was dominated by sort of one form of energy or another in the first half of the last century. It was coal, then it was oil. And it's moving, Katie, to a much more diversified one with oil, with natural gas, with renewables, with other non-fossil fuels. And that's why we laid out the ambition that we did in February to become a net zero company. And that's why we're reinventing the company. And we laid out a new strategy in August, which is to move away from a international oil company that we've been for 111 years to an integrated energy company.
But it's quite a complicated time to try and organise one of these sorts of revolutions. I mean, looking at the global recession, the fall in the oil price that we've seen this year. How do you plan to execute this strategy, and can you really make it work?
Well, it is obviously a very difficult time in the world for everyone. It's a health crisis, it's an economic crisis, it's a mental health crisis. And the economy is difficult and it's uncertain. It will recover, of course. And while it's difficult and hard, I don't think we can use it as an excuse to not transform our company. And this is a multi-decade transformation. And we have to get going. And that's what we're doing. And the push inside the company now is to move from the excitement, really, of the last several months around the ambition and around the strategy to one of execution. And if anything, what's happening in the world just sort of doubles down on our commitment to make this change.
But your investors aren't so sure, are they? I mean, we've seen your share price drop 10% in the last month.
I think I've actually been very heartened by the response that we've got from the strategy, importantly from our employees, who I think have widely embraced it. I think from members of society, including some NGOs that you've had on this program yourself, and from investors. And of course, there's been questions. People want to know more detail. It is a big change. We absolutely acknowledge that. And that's what we're doing this week, Katie, is we're trying to be open. We're trying to be transparent. We're trying to tell people, look, we don't have the answer to every single question, but we're trying to give them more detail. And I'm absolutely convinced, as is the board, that the journey we're embarking on is absolutely the right thing, both for the company and for society.
And what are you saying to investors who want to see you still pay your dividend, which you had to halve recently, while you're making this major transition? And that dividend is so important to so many investors and pension funds.
It is very important, and that decision that we took as a board on the 4th of August was not a decision that we took lightly. We recognise it has real impact on very real people, many of them listening to the programme this morning, so it was a very difficult decision. A committed distribution policy remains. It is one of 3 parts of the proposition we have for investors. We're also offering profitable growth. We think we can grow the company over the next decade, and we're also offering for the ESG investor that's interested in the sustainability aspects, sustainable value. So a difficult decision, a necessary decision for the long term for the company, but one that we didn't take lightly.
And you see it as a long-term thing, do you? You don't see the dividend going back to pre-COVID levels?
Well, as I said, there's 3 parts to that policy, and one is a committed distribution policy. It's a fixed and resilient dividend. We're also committing, Katie, to share buybacks when there's excess cash available, as well as the growth that we can see coming in the next 5 to 10 years, and as well as that sustainability value angle.
Now, one of the things you're doing is doubling the number of convenience stores. Is BP becoming more of a retailer now?
Well, it's interesting. I think people probably don't know very much about that aspect of our business. And, we sell 150 million cups of coffee a year, and actually our wild bean brand, it's our BP branded coffee, is, for example, the number one coffee in New Zealand of all places. People will be familiar here in the UK with our Marks and Spencer's outlets at our stores, and more than half the people that visit those petrol stations don't buy any petrol. They're there for food. So this is a huge part of our company. It's a very profitable part of our business. We do expect we can double it in the next decade. People want more convenience. They want quality. Time is of the essence. They want to be able to get some food. They want to be able to, hopefully in the future, charge their car. And it is all about convenience. And it's an area where we have a lot of history, a good track record, and we want to do more.
Thank you very much. Bernard Looney, the Chief Executive of BP there.